Missing time, one of the many strange experiences I've encountered. Looking back at my life, I am flooded with memories of unexplainable events. I could literally write a chapter book of the many strange things I've witnessed that goes beyond a reasonable explanation. But I'll start with one for this post and continue with more if anyone is interested. I grew up in a one-story, three-bedroom house that had a big field in the backyard with the woods to the side. I loved this house and the woods despite all the weird experiences I've encountered there. This particular experience is definitely in my top 5 just because of the eeriness of the whole thing. I've experienced much stranger things, but this one is a shorter post and I'm being kind of lazy lol. My mom worked nights, so that left my older brother to watch my younger brother and I. When my mom was gone, my younger brother and I would sit on her bed and watch TV in her room. It wasn't uncommon for us to fall asleep in her bed, sometimes like we did this night. I passed out in the middle of a move. I awoke a couple hours later and seen that my younger brother was fast asleep. I sat up and looked over to the digital alarm clock displaying the time 1:47 a.m. in bright red lights. Though with a literal blink of an eye, it changed to 3:30 a.m. My stomach dropped and an overwhelming feeling of fear came over me. Not only because of the sudden missing time, but because of the change of energy I felt. Everything felt just off, a feeling I knew quite well because of the many experiences I've had before. There was an airy, unexplainable feeling that settled over me, that only grew stronger when I suddenly heard what sounded like 20 wolves howling in the direction of the field behind my house. It was a noise I've never heard before and haven't heard since because there are no wolves in the area I live in. Or coyotes. Dogs, yes. But a whole pack of them outside howling at 3 a.m.? I thought back to that time thinking it could have just been a weird dream or something. Years later, I was explaining what happened to my older brother, and that's when he let me know he heard the howling that night too. It's something that he remembers well, because that creepy choir of howls is something you don't hear where I live. This is a real story that just happened to my friend and I, literally losing sleep over it. My friend and I are still trying to process exactly what we saw the other day. We've talked it through countless times, trying to logically figure out how this was possible. Hopefully, someone on here can give us some thoughts and ideas as to what actually happened. So, I recently purchased a small bass boat, and my first mate Legov and I have been super eager to explore the lake and its islands, as well as learn the fishing around it. We're new to Tennessee. Yesterday, on the 4th of July, we decided to go fishing in this very secluded part of the lake we named No Man's Land because of the low-hanging bridge that prevents boaters from entering the section. My boat can make it underneath because of how small it is, but I've never seen another boat in there. We decided to go deeper into the cove than we've ever been before. As we're slowly trolling down the lake, the path before us splits into 3 forks, and I ask which fork we should take. Legov immediately says the middle one. So we continue straight as the water changes from a large lake to a narrow, river-like path. This is where a chain of events happened in quick succession, and we've talked through it after the fact to try and recall the order of how this went down. First, we heard a weird vocal-like noise coming from the woods beyond the shoreline, and we both tensed up and felt very uneasy. "What was that?" Legov asked. "A dog," I said, as that was the first thing that came to mind. "I don't think that was a dog," Legov answered immediately. Then we saw a bird high above us, perching on a branch, staring at us. "Maybe it was that bird," Legov said. "Yeah, maybe," I answered. I'm not sure when it got into my hand, but at some point I drew my pistol and held it down at my side. Legov held the fishing bow. We both had a very weird feeling as we drifted down the river, eyes glued to the bank. We came to a rotting pine tree that had fallen and was now half submerged in the water, sitting on the shoreline. Then it happened. We hear a very loud, heavy-footed animal running through the woods, getting closer to the water. At first I thought it was a deer, as it was almost prancing, but as it got closer and louder, we both realized it was in fact not a deer. It was a very large, jet-black canine. My brain thought, oh, it must be a coyote, but this was much bigger, like a huge German shepherd. and it was fast, like a black shadow, leaping through the trees and quickly approaching the bank that we were floating across from. It didn't seem to have any texture and details, though, almost like it was flat and blurry. We couldn't see fur or its face and eyes, just the outline of its body and tall, wolf like ears. But it was obviously the body of a canine. Adrenaline starting rushing through us, and my brain raced, thinking we were about to have to defend ourselves. It almost looked as if it were charging at us.
But it was zigzagging and dodging through the trees toward the exact portion of shoreline we were floating past. We were scared, but the 15 feet of water between our boat and the shoreline gave us some confidence. It would have to swim out to us, and I didn't see that as likely. It continued its leaping through the woods and quickly reached our portion of the shoreline. In one majestic, fluid motion, it leaped off the shore and dove into the water right under the half-submerged pine tree in front of us. Stomp, 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 splash! That was it. We held our breath as we waited to hear it swim or move toward us. Small ripples reached our boat from the splash. After the fact, Legov swears the splash should have been much bigger for a creature that size. "Watch for it to come back up," I whispered. I had never heard of canines being able to submerge themselves underwater, but here it was happening right in front of our eyes. We waited. Nothing. Silence. Just the subtle sound of the ripples it made slowly dissipating. We waited about 20 more seconds, and still nothing. It was almost as if the entire forest had shut off. Silence. Our eyes were glued to the fallen pine tree it dove under. "Maybe it's just standing in the water under the tree," Legov says. We get the courage to troll the boat a little closer to inspect the tree, but there's nothing. No sign of anything. At this point, we're in complete shock. Stunned. It's gone. How could it be gone? How does something that big just vanish, especially a huge creature like that? After 30 more seconds of silence, Legov breaks it with, "You saw what I saw, right?" A shiver flashes down my spine. "All of it," I reply. "Really, though? What the fuck was that?" Legov said. I replied, "I think we saw a demon," and we both nervously laughed. We stay floating near the shoreline in shock for at least another 10 minutes, hoping for a sign that we weren't crazy. Legov scoured the waters looking to see if it would come up for air. It never did. How the hell could a big black wolf-like creature disappear into thin air, or water for that matter? Being skeptics, there has to be a logical explanation to what we saw, but we can't find one. If it had just splashed the water and gotten out again, 1, we would have seen it walk away in whatever direction, and 2, we would have heard it, as anything putting weight on the leaves makes a loud noise. But it was just silence, the loudest of silences. We live in Middle Tennessee, if that helps at all. We're still a little shaken up by this. This 100% true. We are not bullshitting you. Any insight would be much appreciated.